Welcome back. Yes, Montreal Canadiens jersey again. So we're going to look at Guy Lapointe as I look at a career of a Hall of Famer, who in his own time might have been overshadowed a little bit by his own teammates, and in terms of defensemen by a guy named Bobby Orr. So Guy Lapointe comes up through the hockey world and waits his turn to play on the Montreal Canadiens blue line. He actually had thought about becoming a police officer, but his father actually encouraged him to get into hockey and was like, all right, give hockey a shot. And it's a good thing that his dad did. So 68-69, he makes his debut with Montreal, just plays one regular season game. Breaking into the Montreal Canadiens roster at this point is difficult. He was in hockey before we had the draft, so that's why he's not drafted. 69-70, 5 games played and no points. So nothing to show for the first 2 seasons that he had his cups of coffee in the National Hockey League. But in 70-71, he does pretty well. Plays 78 games that year, 15 goals, 29 assists for 44 points. So not too bad for a defenseman. 15 goals as a rookie. And in the playoffs, he plays 20 games, 4 goals, 5 assists, 9 points. And Montreal wins the Stanley Cup. Guy Lapointe, a part of a lot of Stanley Cup winners in his career. 71-72, he plays 69 games for Montreal, 11 goals, 38 assists, 49 points. As in the early 70s, we're starting to see defensemen scoring well because of that number 4 in Boston and numerous others as well. Really, we're seeing that renaissance for defensemen with scoring. In the playoffs, he adds 1 assist in 6 games, as Montreal surprisingly doesn't win the Stanley Cup in 72. 72-73, he plays 76 games that year, 19 goals, 35 assists, 54 points. In the playoffs, he plays 17 games, 6 goals, 7 assists, 13 points. So he plays and wins a Stanley Cup, plays in the All-Star game, is named to the first All-Star team at the end of the year, and he was second in Norris voting behind, you guessed it, Bobby Orr. So probably would have had a Norris Trophy in his career if not for Bobby Orr, and there are others that played in the 70s you could say the same of. 73-74, he plays 71 games for Montreal, 13 goals, 40 assists, 53 points. He adds 2 assists in 6 playoff games. So again, no Stanley Cup that year, but they make up for it the following year and beyond. Keep in mind 73-74, that was the season where Montreal had their stalemate with Ken Dryden. So definitely not the same numbers for Montreal without Dryden as it was with Dryden. 74-75 with Dryden back. Guy Lapointe also has his best season in his career. 80 games played, 28 goals, 47 assists, 75 points. So almost a point per game on the blue line, not too shabby. A lot of power play goals in there as well. He had a booming shot from the point. In the playoffs, 11 games, 6 goals, 4 assists, 10 points. Plays in the All-Star game that year. Second team All-Star, third in Norris voting. So Montreal's getting ready to get back to being Stanley Cup champions, and in 76 they'll do it. 75-76, 77 games played, 21 goals, 27 assists, 68 points. So with the 21 goals and 47 assists, so the 47 assists stays the same, but that's back-to-back 20-goal seasons. Not too bad on the blue line. In the playoffs, 3 goals, 3 assists for 6 points in 13 games. Wins the Stanley Cup. Yep, All-Star game, absolutely. Second team All-Star, and he's 4th in Norris voting that year. The following season, 76-77, plays 77 games that year. 25 goals, so that's his 3rd straight, and what would be his final 20-goal season. 41 assists, 66 points, and in 12 playoff games, 3 goals, 9 assists, 12 points. Stanley Cup, yep, he gets that Stanley Cup again. All-Star game, absolutely. Second All-Star team, yep, and 4th in the Norris voting. So, 77-78, he just plays 49 games that year, misses some games with injury. 13 goals, 29 assists, 42 points. And in the playoffs, he adds a goal, 6 assists for 7 points in 14 games. Stanley Cup, yep, that's 3 in a row. 5th in Norris voting, absolutely. So he is still one of the best defensemen in the game. And it's remarkable being 5th in Norris voting when you only played 49 out of 80 games. 78-79, 69 games played, 13 goals, 42 assists, 55 points. So he plays 20 more games than the previous year. In the playoffs, 2 goals, 6 assists for 8 points in 10 games. Stanley Cup, absolutely. 5th in Norris voting, why not? So he's top 5 in Norris voting for quite a while there during the 70s. That's what gets him into the Hall of Fame. And again, I understand he never won a Norris Trophy, but you can't just use that to justify putting somebody into the Hall of Fame or not. 78 or 79-80. Plays 45 games that year, 6 goals, 20 assists, 26 points. So basically, injuries and aging take a toll at this stage. Plays just 2 playoff games that year, no points. 80-81, he only plays 33 games that year, 1 goal, 9 assists, 10 points, and just plays in 1 playoff game. So 81, that'd be the year that the Oilers knocked off Montreal in the first round. 81-82, he plays 47 games with Montreal. His scoring comes back a bit, 1 goal, 19 assists, 20 points. But March the 9th, the unthinkable. Guy Lapointe is traded to the St. Louis Blues in return for a 1983 second-round pick, which Montreal uses to draft Sergio Momesso. Not bad. So after the trade to St. Louis, he plays 8 games, records 6 assists, and then in the playoffs, he adds 1 goal in 7 games. St. Louis had a pretty big year in 81-82. I seem to remember Mike Liut had a good year that year as well. And so adding Lapointe on the blue line, solid move. You're getting a guy who's got 6 Stanley Cup rings and a lot of experience. 82-83, 54 games played by Lapointe, 3 goals, 23 assists, 26 points. In the playoffs, he adds a single assist in 4 games. So he's no longer the Guy Lapointe that was, up in the Norris conversation and one of the best defensemen in the game, but he's still pretty good. Then August 15th of 1983, he does the unthinkable. He signs as a free agent with the Boston Bruins. Yeah, I can't imagine playing 14 years, well, almost 14 years in Montreal and then signing in Boston. 45 games with the Bruins, 2 goals, 16 assists, 18 points. Just played the 45 games. He had injuries to his eye and to his cheekbone. That limited both his effectiveness when he played as well as the number of games he played. So he retires with 884 games played, 171 goals, 451 assists for 622 points. In the playoffs, plays 123 games, 26 goals, 44 assists for 70 points. Solid all-around numbers. And also, 1972, he plays in the Summit Series for Team Canada. So we talked about Ken Dryden and how Dryden didn't have a lot of experience when he played in the Canada Cup. Neither did Lapointe. He was basically in his second full year in the NHL and gets gold. And not only that, but he went over when other players might not have. He went over and played even though he knew his wife was about to give birth, and she did. She gave birth to their child while he was in the USSR playing in that Summit Series. He also played in the 1976 Canada Cup, where they won gold, and then played in the 1979 Challenge Cup, which was the NHL All-Stars and the Soviets, or USSR, playing a best of 3. The Soviets won that 2-1. So, interesting idea, right? Playing 3 different games and having the All-Stars and Soviets on the other side. And again, it was a chance for North Americans to see just what the Soviets were doing and how different the hockey was between the two. But Guy Lapointe and the NHL All-Stars won the first game and then lost the next 2. Lapointe named as one of the big 3 in Montreal. So he played with Larry Robinson and Serge Savard. And I can't imagine, how tough it was to play against these 3 guys who were all capable of handling themselves physically, which was important during 70s hockey. You had to be able to handle yourself physically. You couldn't be a smaller, weaker defenseman. You were going to get pushed aside. And, they stood out. And the fact that Guy Lapointe was still getting Norris votes to put him in the top 5 while he's playing with Robinson and Savard says a lot for his talent level. He was inducted into the Hall of Fame in 1993. So he didn't immediately get into the Hall of Fame. He does eventually get there. A lot of players from that 70s dynasty, which is widely seen as the best dynasty, or one of the strongest dynasties in NHL history, really, a lot of those players end up being Hall of Fame bound, and I can't find an argument against any of them, really. But let me know your thoughts in the comment section below, as always. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through. You just happened upon this video. Thank you guys so much for watching, for all your support. I will talk to you again soon.